The first thing I noticed was the place settings. Not the silver. My grandfather's silver had always been ridiculous. But the name cards. Thick ivory stock, black ink, perfect spacing. Like a board meeting pretending to be a family lunch. My name sat near the far end of the table, angled slightly away from the head, as if someone wanted me present but not centered. My half-sister's card was closer to Grandpa's right hand. A small detail, maybe. In this house, small details were how people bled without leaving stains. I walked in with my mother behind me, the ex-wife, the inconvenient footnote. She held herself straight anyway, like a woman who'd learned posture was the only thing nobody could repossess. The last time we'd been in this mansion, security had escorted us out while my father stared past us like we were a bad smell. I was 14 then, old enough to understand that being family was a contract you could be removed from. My father stood near the fireplace, laughing too loudly at something his current wife whispered. She was polished in the way expensive things are polished. Shiny on top, sharp underneath. Her hand rested on his arm like she owned it. Like she'd always owned it. Their daughter, my half-sister, sat scrolling on her phone, swinging her feet, completely unaware she was the centerpiece of a legal trap. Grandpa didn't rise when we entered. He didn't need to. The room adjusted itself around him, the way it always had. He looked smaller than I remembered, skin pulled tight over bone, but his eyes were still the same. Calm, watchful, patient. A man who could wait years for a return on an investment, and apparently for a confession. "My granddaughter," he said, and I couldn't tell which one he meant until his gaze pinned me. "Sit." No hello, no hug, no sentiment, just placement. The lawyer was already there, perched with a folder like a crow guarding something shiny. Two men I didn't recognize stood near the wall. Security, maybe. Or witnesses. Or both. My mother's fingers brushed the back of my chair, steadying herself. "We're here," she said softly, more to me than to anyone else. My father finally looked at her. At us. His expression tightened into that old familiar judgment. The one that had followed me through school conferences, birthday parties, every moment he remembered we existed. "You're late," he said. "We're not," Grandpa replied, voice thin but final. "We're exactly on time." Silence snapped into place. My father blinked like he'd been corrected in public and couldn't decide if that was allowed. Grandpa nodded once at the lawyer. The lawyer opened the folder. "I'm revising my estate plan today," Grandpa said, and the room visibly leaned forward. $1.7 billion. My half-sister looked up, finally interested. Grandpa continued, slow as a judge. "It will go to my granddaughters, 50-50. My father's current wife exhaled like she'd just won something. "But," Grandpa added, and his eyes flicked to me, "only if you are both what you claim to be." The words hit the table like a dropped glass. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. My father turned toward my mother as if the script had finally arrived. "This is what I've been saying for years," he said, voice sharp with relief. "We all know why the marriage ended." My mother didn't flinch. She just looked at him, tired and unafraid. "You don't," she said. "You never did." Grandpa's gaze didn't leave me as he spoke the next sentence. "DNA tests," he said. "Today." And that's when my father's current wife smiled. Too quick, too confident, reaching into her designer bag as if she'd come prepared for war. She slid an envelope onto the table. "I already have one," she said sweetly. My stomach dropped because my grandfather didn't look surprised. He looked amused, and my mother's hand, light on my shoulder, went suddenly cold. The envelope didn't look dangerous. That was the problem. It rested on the table between the crystal water pitcher and my grandfather's folded hands, beige and ordinary, like a utility bill. My father's current wife kept her palm close to it, fingers relaxed, proprietary. She wore the same expression she used at charity events, pleasant, prepared, untouchable. "I thought it would be irresponsible to wait," she said lightly, "with so much at stake." My father exhaled, relieved. I could see it in the way his shoulders dropped, like the decision had already been made for him. "This is what I've been trying to explain," he said, looking not at me, but at my grandfather. "The truth always comes out." My mother didn't sit. She stayed standing behind my chair, her presence steady and quiet, the same way she used to stand behind me at school meetings when teachers spoke in careful tones about complications. Her hand rested on the back of my chair, not possessive, just there. "Proof." Grandpa nodded once. "Open it." The paper slid free with a soft rasp. Charts, percentages, bold black lettering declaring certainty. My father leaned forward, scanning fast, eager. His wife watched his face, not the document. She already knew what it said, or thought she did. "That's definitive," my father said. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He looked at me the way you look at a locked door you finally found the key for. "I'm sorry it had to come to this." My half-sister glanced over, bored. "Does this mean something changes?" No one answered her. My mother stepped forward then, finally moving. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. "You really are an idiot," she said to my father calmly, like stating the weather. "All these years, and you still don't know when you're being handled." His face darkened. "Not now," he snapped. "Don't start." "I didn't start it," she replied. "I survived it." Grandpa's eyes never left my father's wife. "There's another envelope," he said. The lawyer stiffened. "Yes, sir." He reached into his folder and placed a second document on the table. Thinner, unmarked. My name written across the front in my grandfather's hand. My stomach tightened. "This one," Grandpa said softly, "was prepared long before today." For the first time, the smile slipped from my father's wife's face. Just for a heartbeat. But it was enough. Because Grandpa smiled back, and I understood then that this wasn't an investigation, it was a reckoning. The second envelope felt heavier than the first, even before anyone touched it. My name stared up at me in my grandfather's handwriting. Precise, old-fashioned, unmistakable. He'd taught me how to recognize forged signatures when I was 16, sliding documents across his desk like puzzles. "People reveal themselves in the margins," he used to say. I wondered which margin he was watching now. "Give it to her," he said. The lawyer hesitated, then pushed the envelope toward me. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. My father shifted in his chair, irritation creeping into his confidence. His wife crossed her legs slowly, recalculating. My mother leaned closer, her breath warm near my ear. "Whatever it says," she whispered, "remember who you are." I broke the seal. Inside wasn't a report. It was a letter. 1 page, dense. My grandfather's voice rose off the paper like he was standing beside me. "This test was conducted 8 years ago," it began. "Quietly, professionally, with consent obtained the only way consent ever is in families like ours, by not asking questions." My pulse hammered. I kept reading. "The results are conclusive. You are my son's biological child. There has never been doubt. Only noise." A sound escaped me before I could stop it. Not a sob, not a laugh. Something broken and relieved all at once. My father stood abruptly. "That's not possible," he said. "She already—" Sit, Grandpa said. Not loud, absolute. My father's wife leaned forward. That test is outdated, she said smoothly. Science evolves. Procedures change. Lies don't, Grandpa replied. The lawyer cleared his throat again, visibly uncomfortable now. There's an addendum. He slid another page onto the table. This one faced my father's wife. Her color drained. This, Grandpa said, is the result you brought today, and this is the metadata attached to it. The room tilted. Words like altered external submission, unauthorized lab access floated up like debris. My half-sister finally looked scared. Mom? Silence. Then Grandpa delivered the sentence that split the room clean in half. The man who helped you fake that test, he said to my father's wife, has been in your life far longer than my son has. My father turned toward her, slow, disbelieving. What is he talking about? She didn't answer, because the lawyer was already opening the final file, and the name inside it wasn't my father's. The name hit the table like a dropped knife. I won't repeat it yet. Not because it mattered to anyone else in the room, but because the way my father's wife reacted to it told me everything before a single word was spoken. Her hand flew, not to her mouth, not to her chest, but to her phone. Instinctive, defensive, caught. My father followed her movement, slow and confused. "Who is that?" he asked. His voice sounded younger, thinner, like a man realizing the floor has rules he never bothered to read. The lawyer didn't answer him. Grandpa did. "He's the man who signed the altered lab request," Grandpa said. "The same man who booked international flights matching your wife's travel dates for over a decade. The same man whose financial transfers paid for your daughter's private school." My half-sister gasped. "Dad pays for my school." Grandpa's gaze softened when he looked at her. Just a fraction. Not all of it. My mother exhaled slowly behind me. Not triumph, not satisfaction. Just something like the end of a long hold. I realized then how many years she'd been waiting to breathe. My father turned fully toward his wife. "Tell me he's lying," he said. "Just tell me that." She didn't. Instead, she straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and did the one thing liars do when they're out of exits. They get offended. "This is harassment," she snapped. "You can't ambush me with this garbage. I demand an independent—" "You demanded," Grandpa cut in. "A fortune built on bloodlines. This is the cost." The lawyer slid one last document forward. A timeline, photos, hotel receipts. A child support agreement never filed in court. "That man," the lawyer said quietly, "is your daughter's biological father." The room fractured. My father staggered back into his chair like someone had unplugged him. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "All this time," he whispered, "all this time you let me." "You wanted to believe it," she said sharply. "You needed someone to blame. I just pointed." My mother laughed then, once, dry. "And you picked the wrong woman," she said. "Congratulations." My half-sister started crying, real crying, the kind that doesn't know where to land. I watched her and felt something complicated twist in my chest. She was innocent. We both were. We'd just been used differently. Grandpa stood. The room obeyed. "The inheritance," he said, "will not be divided." Everyone froze. "It will go," he continued, looking directly at me, "to the granddaughter who was never a lie." My father looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, and realizing how much it had cost him. No one spoke after that, not immediately. The words "will not be divided" hung in the air, heavy and unfinished, like a sentence waiting for permission to breathe. My father stared at me as if I'd been swapped in while he wasn't looking. I recognized that stare. It was the same one he'd used years ago, when he'd stood in the doorway of our old house and decided we no longer belonged inside it. My half-sister was still crying, quiet now, folded into herself. Her mother didn't reach for her. She was busy calculating damage, angles, survival. Even cornered, she was still a strategist. "You can't do this," she said finally, turning to Grandpa. "She's a child. She doesn't understand this kind of responsibility." "I understand it perfectly," I said before he could answer. My voice surprised me, steady, almost calm. "I understand what it costs." Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp and resentful. For the first time, she looked at me not as a problem but as a threat. Grandpa nodded once, approving. "She understands," he said, "because she paid the price early." My father pushed himself up, palms flat on the table. "This isn't justice," he said hoarsely. "This is punishment." "Yes," Grandpa replied. "For you." That landed harder than anything else. "You accused the wrong woman," Grandpa continued. "You destroyed your own home because it was easier than questioning your pride. And when a lie was placed gently in your hands, you held it like a gift." My mother stepped forward then, finally visible to everyone in the room. "I begged you to listen," she said quietly to my father. "You told me I was imagining things. You told me I was desperate." My father couldn't look at her. The lawyer cleared his throat. "There are provisions," he said carefully. "Trusts for education, housing, support." "For the child," Grandpa said, gesturing to my half-sister. "Not for her mother." Her head snapped up. "You're cutting me out?" "You cut yourself out," Grandpa replied, "years ago." Security moved closer, not aggressively, just enough. My father's wife laughed then, short, brittle. "You think money fixes this?" she said to me. "You think this makes you better?" I met her gaze. "No," I said, "it just makes me done." My half-sister looked up at me, eyes red. I wanted to say something to her. Something kind. Something that didn't sound like a verdict. But Grandpa was already sitting again, the meeting sliding toward its end. "There will be no appeals," he said. "No negotiations. This family will stop pretending." My father sank back into his chair, hollowed out. My mother placed her hand on my shoulder again, warmer now. And for the first time in my life, I felt the ground stop shifting under my feet. But Grandpa wasn't finished. He looked at me and said, "There's one more thing you need to hear." And I knew whatever came next would hurt worse than the truth. Grandpa didn't look at anyone else when he spoke. Just me. That alone made my stomach tighten. "You think today was about biology," he said. "It wasn't." The room stilled again, like it had learned obedience. Even my father's wife stopped shifting in her seat. My half-sister sniffed quietly, wiped her face on her sleeve. "I hired a private investigator the day your parents separated," Grandpa continued. "Not because I doubted your mother, because I doubted my son." My father flinched as if struck. "You had no right." "I had every right," Grandpa replied. "You wanted my money involved in your divorce. That made it my business." I felt my mother's breath hitch behind me. "The investigator followed both households," Grandpa said. "Yours and hers. He documented finances, travel, inconsistencies. He collected what people throw away without thinking. Hair, cups, toothbrushes." His eyes stayed on me. "That's when the first tests were done." My father looked ill. "You knew," he whispered. "You knew back then." "Yes," Grandpa said. "I knew your first daughter was yours. I also knew your second wasn't." A sound escaped my father that I'd never heard before. Something between disbelief and grief. "Then why," he asked hoarsely, Did you let this go on?" Grandpa finally turned his gaze to him. "Because truth without consequence is just trivia." Silence swallowed that. "You destroyed a marriage," Grandpa went on. "You exiled a child. You built a life on the comfort of being right instead of the discomfort of being honest." He gestured around the table. Today was not a surprise. It was a delayed invoice. My mother stepped forward, voice low. "All those years," she said. "You watched us struggle." "I watched you endure," Grandpa corrected gently. "There's a difference." I didn't know what to do with that. Gratitude and anger collided inside me, messy and unresolved. My father's wife stood abruptly. "This is sadism," she said. "You enjoyed this." "No," Grandpa said. "I waited for it." Security stepped closer again. "And one more thing," Grandpa added. "The investigator didn't just collect evidence." The lawyer slid a thin folder toward my father. Inside were copies of emails, messages, old ones my father had sent years ago, full of certainty and cruelty. Accusations, threats, lines he'd drawn and crossed. My father stared at them, exposed to himself. "Those," Grandpa said, "are why you get nothing." My father slumped, finally emptied. I felt something shift then, not relief, not triumph, but release. Like a story I'd been forced to carry was finally being taken out of my hands. But Grandpa wasn't done shaping the ending. He looked at me again. "You have a choice," he said, "and it won't be about money." And suddenly, the inheritance felt like the least dangerous thing in the room. The choice sounded simple when Grandpa said it. They always do, the choices that ruin you either way. "You can take everything," he said, hands folded, like this was a discussion about weather. "Or you can decide what kind of family survives this." My father looked up sharply. "What does that mean?" "It means," Grandpa replied, "that money can correct facts, but it cannot correct damage. That part requires intent." The lawyer shifted, uncomfortable again. He'd probably expected signatures by now, not philosophy. I felt every eye on me. My father's, hollow, pleading. My mother's, guarded, afraid to hope. My half-sister's, red, lost, searching for an anchor. Even her mother watched me now, measuring, the way predators reassess when prey turns. "What exactly is the choice?" I asked. Grandpa nodded, as if he'd been waiting for the question. "You inherit the estate, cleanly, immediately, or," he paused, "you place conditions." My pulse spiked. "Conditions on whom?" "On your father," he said, "and on her." He didn't bother naming my father's wife. My father stood again. "You don't get to put her in the middle of this," he said. "She's my daughter." I looked at him. Really looked. So was I. Silence bit down hard. Grandpa continued. "If you choose conditions, the inheritance is delayed, trust controlled, public disclosures included." He glanced at the lawyer. "Full transparency." My father's wife inhaled sharply. "You'd humiliate us." "You humiliated yourselves," Grandpa replied. "This would just make it educational." I felt my mother's hand tighten on my shoulder, not pressure, permission. "What kind of conditions?" I asked. Grandpa's eyes softened. "The kind that make people tell the truth out loud." My father swallowed. "Don't do this," he said to me. "Take the money, walk away, let this end." I laughed quietly. "It already ended," I said, "just not for you." My half-sister stood then, small but determined. "I didn't ask for any of this," she said. Her voice shook. "I don't want to be the reason you all destroy each other." I turned to her. "You're not?" I said gently. And I meant it. Her mother stepped forward. "You think you're better than me?" she snapped. You think suffering makes you righteous? No, I said. I think lying makes you predictable. I looked back at Grandpa. What happens if I choose conditions? He met my gaze, proud and grave at once. Then this stops being a private family matter. The room seemed to shrink. And if I don't? I asked. Then you get very rich, he said, and very alone. My father closed his eyes. I understood then that the real inheritance wasn't the money, it was the moment. And once I chose, there would be no rewinding it. I chose the conditions. I didn't announce it dramatically. I didn't raise my voice or wait for silence. I just said it, plain and final, the way you say something once you've already lived with the consequences in your head. I want it documented, I said. Everything, the investigator's report, the fake test, the affair, the money transfers, and I want it entered into the trust conditions. The lawyer's pen froze mid-air. My father's head snapped up. His wife's breath hitched, sharp and loud in the quiet room. You can't be serious, my father said. You'll destroy what little is left. I looked at him. There's nothing left. There's just what you've been avoiding. Grandpa nodded slowly. Proceed. The lawyer swallowed and began outlining it aloud, clinical and merciless. Public record disclosures tied to the trust. Affidavits. Signed acknowledgments. A requirement that my father formally retract every accusation he'd ever made against my mother, in writing, under oath. A requirement that his wife acknowledge the falsified test and the identity of her daughter's biological father. And if we refuse? She asked, her voice tight now, the Polish cracking. Then the trust activates without mitigation, the lawyer said. Full release. My half-sister shook her head, panicking. Mom, please. Her mother didn't look at her. She looked at me. You think this makes you powerful? She asked. Dragging this into daylight? No, I said. It makes me finished hiding. That's when she laughed. Really laughed. Low and ugly. You have no idea what you're doing. Actually, Grandpa said, she does. My father finally stood, hands braced on the table like he needed it to keep upright. I'll sign, he said hoarsely. Whatever it is, just don't make this worse. I felt something twist in my chest. Not sympathy, something closer to grief for the man he might have been. His wife stared at him. You can't be serious. I already lost one daughter, he said. I won't lose another. She looked around the room, realizing too late that there was no one left to perform for. Her mask slipped completely then. Fine, she said coldly. I'll sign, but don't expect forgiveness. I don't, I replied. I expect honesty. The lawyer slid the documents forward. Pens moved, pages turned. Names were written where lies used to live. And with every signature, something ancient and rotten finally loosened its grip on me. But as the last page was signed, Grandpa leaned back, eyes still sharp. One more disclosure, he said. Everyone froze again. Because lies, he added, rarely travel alone. And I knew whatever came next would break the illusion of control she still thought she had. Because the man who helped her fake the test wasn't just a lover. He was already in the room. I noticed him only when Grandpa said his name. He'd been standing near the wall the entire time, half-shadowed, dressed like someone who didn't want attention but was used to rooms where money spoke louder than introductions. Mid-40s, calm posture, too calm. The kind of man who watches instead of reacts. This, Grandpa said, gesturing with his chin, is the consultant your wife insisted on using. My father's wife went very still. The man didn't deny it. He didn't need to. He stepped forward on his own, like the moment had finally arrived and delay no longer served him. "You said you'd never involve him," she hissed, venom leaking through the composure. "I didn't," Grandpa replied. "You did, every time you trusted him." The lawyer opened the last folder. Photos, surveillance stills, bank records, a child support agreement signed years ago, notarized overseas, not filed, not needed, until now. The man exhaled, slow, resigned. "She told me it was handled," he said, not to anyone in particular, that the old man would never look too closely. My father turned toward him, eyes wild. "You," he whispered. "You're the father?" The man hesitated only a second, then nodded. "Yes?" The word cracked the room. My half-sister made a small sound, something animal and wounded, and finally her mother reached for her, but she flinched away. "You lied to me," my father said to his wife. "You let me destroy my own family." She rounded on him, sharp as glass. "You didn't need help destroying it," she snapped. "You were eager. You wanted a villain." The man shifted, uncomfortable now. "I never asked for the money," he said. "I just didn't want my daughter erased." I stood then. My legs felt unreal, but my voice didn't. "You didn't erase her," I said. "You erased me, and you let it happen." Silence swallowed that. Grandpa stood, slower now, age finally visible, but his voice didn't waver. "This is the climax," he said. "The point where the truth costs something." He turned to my father's wife. "You lose everything, access, assets, name. You will not contest this." Security stepped closer. She laughed once, shrill. "You think this is fair?" "No," Grandpa said. "I think it's accurate." He turned to my father. "You will live knowing you chose wrong every step of the way." My father collapsed back into his chair, face in his hands. Grandpa looked at me. "The inheritance," he said, "is yours, completely, immediately." I felt nothing triumphant, only heavy, final. And as the room broke apart, crying, shouting, the sound of consequences arriving, I understood this wasn't justice as people imagine it. It was truth, finally unsupervised, and it burned everything it touched. The house emptied slowly, like a theater after a bad ending. People lingering not because they wanted to stay, but because leaving meant accepting what they'd just seen. Security escorted my father's wife out first. She didn't fight it. She didn't cry. She walked like someone already rehearsing a new version of herself, one without our name attached. My father didn't follow. He stayed seated long after everyone else stood, staring at the table as if the grain might rearrange itself into a different outcome. When he finally looked up at me, his face was stripped of all authority. No anger left, just confusion and regret, too late to be useful. "I was wrong," he said. I believed him. That didn't mean anything changed. My half-sister was taken into the side room by a woman from Grandpa's legal team. Gentle, efficient, prepared to explain a future that had just cracked open. I caught her eye once before the door closed. There was no accusation in it, just loss. I nodded at her. It was all I could give. My mother and I stood together by the window while the lawyer finalized signatures in hushed tones. Outside, the grounds looked untouched. Perfect. Money had always been good at that, making devastation look tidy. "You okay?" my mother asked. I searched myself for the answer. "I think so," I said. "I feel finished." She smiled at that, small, real. "That's not nothing." Grandpa joined us then, leaning heavily on his cane. Up close, I could see how much this had cost him too. He wasn't cruel, he was exhausted. "I didn't do this to be kind," he said quietly. "I did it to be correct." "I know," I replied, and I did. "You'll be watched now," he added, questioned, resented. "I already was," I said. That made him smile. The papers were signed, the trust activated, the fortune became mine in the most impersonal way possible. Numbers shifting, accounts unlocking, power transferring without ceremony. My father approached once more before leaving. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "Good," I replied. "That means you're finally listening." He nodded, like a man learning a language too late in life, and walked out. When the door closed behind him, the house felt different. Quieter, not empty, cleared. Grandpa squeezed my hand once. "Don't waste it," he said. "I won't," I promised. And for the first time, that promise belonged entirely to me. Not to a name, not to a bloodline, not to a lie. Just to the truth that survived.